Cyprus has managed to reach a last-minute deal with its creditors on a €10 billion bailout, ultimately crucial to preventing the country from falling into bankruptcy. The rescue package, however, comes at a steep price. Deposits over €100,000 and the country's two largest banks will be raided. They're looking at about hacking 30% in taxes. Let's get the details now. RT's Tessa Arcilia standing by for us live right now in Nicosia. And Tessa, it's good to see you today. Let's talk about this now. The deal has been reached. Do you think Cyprus is now out of the darkness?
Well, let's just say that it has averted today that technical bankruptcy, but it is certainly not out of the woods. This is going to be a long process of restructuring, of having to look at finances from the very beginning. Let's look at the actual deal. So what they agreed upon in Brussels is that the Laiki Bank, now that is the Popular Bank of Cyprus, it's the second largest lender of the country, will essentially be split into two, now creating that good bank, bad bank. So what will happen is those depositors with less than €100,000 in the bank will be transferred to the Bank of Cyprus, that is the biggest lender of the country, and essentially creating that good bank. Now the others with more than €100,000 of uninsured deposits, those that are not covered under EU guarantees, EU laws, would be taking a huge loss, very significant loss. And this will really hurt those with, of course, their life savings, or those with the small to medium-sized enterprises with money in the bank. So they will be taking a big loss, and essentially Laiki Bank will be shut down, and this will essentially result in jobs lost, and that is what some hundreds of people have already been protesting here. Okay, and then aside from that splitting of the Bank of Cyprus will also be absorbing the other bad debts of Laiki Bank. So the Bank of Cyprus itself, the biggest lender, is not out of the woods as well, now because it will be absorbing some of the toxic assets. Also, let's remember that there are still capital controls in place, which means that banks can still impose restrictions on the amount of money that citizens can take from the ATMs, or the amount of money they can move around, and this is really creating a credit crunch, a cash crunch. Everybody trying to hold on to those €5–10 that they have, just in case there's even lower limits, because right now they can only take about €100 left, and so that's where it stands right now. And also the creation of the Solidarity Fund. So a lot of details still coming. Again, as I said, this is still a long process. They've agreed generally getting that €10 billion bailout. And one more thing I'd like to add lastly is that this raid, as some would call, on the deposits of those big deposits will create about €4.2 billion. Let's not forget, the IMF and the Troika wanted €5.8 billion. So they may still impose raises on taxes on citizens in order to make up for that differences that they still lack.
So you're talking about still at least $1 billion short there. You talk about the possibility of raising taxes on this as people's savings accounts are getting pilfered. Now the banks are saying to people you can only pull out a certain small amount from your banks every day. So the people are really in a tough position. And all the while, Tessa, I hear the Cypriot president saying that people will be pleased with the news. Well, are they? Do you think they're buying it?
Well, first of all, they have to go through that very technical explanation that I had just given to you. And frankly, the reaction here is definitely not one of pleasure, of welcoming this deal. They're very frustrated, still very disappointed. Let's not forget that as this unfolded a week ago, the feeling of the people here is that a red line has been crossed. Remember the suggestion that they will be dipping into the savings of even those small deposit holders. This has really sent a very bad message to people. They've lost confidence, they've lost trust in whatever the government or the Troika presents to them. They're just really worried. Will I have cash? Will I have a job? Will I have savings? And these questions for them are not answered by this very technical deal that their government has agreed with the Troika.
All right, RT's Tessa Arcilia there live in Nicosia. Thank you very much. All right, let's get some more perspective on this right now. I'm joined here in the studio by RT News editor Ivor Crotty. Ivor, good to have you coming in on such short notice here. Let's talk about this here. Cyprus, it only took nearly a year for them to get the bailout they were asking for, and yet, from what I understand, it was still a bit of a shortfall.
That's classic, yeah, classic Eurozone mismanagement, I think. It took 9 months for them to put together a bailout package. 9 months after the Cypriots asked for a bailout package. They struck a deal at 5 o'clock in the morning, a deal that has markets up and down. The euro's been up and down on the dollar this morning. And despite all of that, the deal that they do strike comes in at $7 billion less than what the Cypriots were asking for in the first place.
Well, there we go. So what happens next?
Well, as Tessa said, they closed the country's second largest bank. The economy's not that big. I mean, a couple of thousand people are going to lose their jobs here. Since the first bailout package was announced, capital flight from Cyprus has in fact doubled. That's Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung was reporting that. And this is despite the Eurogroup putting a freeze. Let's not underestimate this. They froze the entire retail banking sector of a country for a week, having been given 2 fingers by local lawmakers. It's quite extraordinary.
I mean, at the same time, Ivor, we're hearing this phrase of that of a casino capitalism being thrown about. What do you make of that?
Yeah. Well, let's get back to, from a Moscow perspective very quickly. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev said this morning that he felt that the Europeans were stealing what has already been stolen. I think that's a reference to Cyprus's offshore status. The casino capitalism line is a line that French Foreign Minister, for example, trotted out this morning. I think it's a line they're using to justify what it is that they're doing. And let's not forget that this is not the kind of term they were using when they integrated Cyprus into the Eurozone in 2003.
Well, you talk about integrating Cyprus into the Eurozone. I mean, let's discuss the broader picture of the Eurozone. Do you think, what about other members? Should they be looking at what's happening in Cyprus and should they be worried?
Well, yes and no. And I'll tell you who won't be worried. Switzerland, Latvia and Andorra. Financial Times is reporting that they have their representatives from solicitors companies from each of those countries very happy to offer a haven to the cash that is on deposit in Cyprus. Now let's not get things out of perspective here. Russian cash is notoriously associated with Cyprus, but that by no means accounts for the other 70% of money that's sitting on that island right now.
I mean, sorry to jump in, Ivor, but there was also something that was saying this was a bit of a kick in the face to Russia here, because there's so much Russian money in the Cyprus banks there that did EU technocrats suddenly realise, hold on a sec, we can help with the Cyprus bailout by going after the Russians who banked there so much.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's a good point to be made there. If you take the Irish case, for example, when banks went bad, the Troika was very happy to foist that debt on a generation of Irish taxpayers, whereas here they seem very, very happy for finally depositors to take the cut. In my opinion, there's incompetency, there's double standards, and there's political irresponsibility pretty much everywhere.
Well, I mean, it's a good way of summing it up, but also, I mean, the risk was credibility.
Yes, and in my opinion, Brussels has cashed its check.
Brussels has cashed its check. I mean, also many already calling this the biggest bout of financial fraud in broad daylight. One guy did an article in a British newspaper the other day saying, well, the people in England, or the UK rather, are not being too stressed because the government takes small slices away from their savings and putting on austerity. But here in Cyprus, it's been what many are calling a massive smash and grab. RT News editor Ivor Crotty, I'm out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rory.